We need a common sense Conservative Prime Minister who will axe the tax to bring home lower prices, cap spending and cut waste to balance the budget, bringing down inflation and interest rates, lower income taxes so people bring home more powerful paychecks and hard work pays off, that we link federal infrastructure dollars for each city to the number of homes they allow to get built, so that we reward those who get out of the way and let builders build, and penalize those that block new construction. We need to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. We want those homes to be in safe neighborhoods, so we need jail and not bail, jail and not bail, jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders and other criminals who have terrorized our streets. We need treatment, not decriminalize crack and heroin, to bring order and safety to our communities, and we need a Prime Minister that puts the people ahead of the government. That is the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Now, let's bring it home.
Thanks so much. We'll now take a few questions from the floor.
Hello. My first question might not be the easiest for a politician to answer, but this is Rebel News, and I'm Drea Humphrey. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
In 2021, the Tecumseh-Secwepemc First Nation Band government said that they found the remains of 215 children who were former students of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. The reality is that to date, not a single body has been discovered. The band government itself has revised the wording of their claim to say that it's 200 probable graves, no mention of specific children anymore. And the only way to know what's actually beneath the soil would be to excavate, which the band government has not done in 2.5 years to date. Meanwhile, in Canada, 96 churches have been burnt or vandalized across the country since that initial claim was made. Many of the fires are proven arsons, and the vandals often leave messages that tie to the initial 215 kids' claim buried in unmarked graves. My question is, why, just like the leftist media, the NDP, the Liberal government, are the Conservatives also so quiet about this truth and good news, which is that to date 215 children's remains have not been discovered there, when that truth coming from political leaders could potentially help set free Christian Canadians from attacks on their places of worship?
Thank you for your question. I would
That is a very big question to ask, and let's see what Pierre has to say. And I understand too, it was actually 1,000 was the claim that went around the world, and there's nothing to say it was bad. I mean, I'm not getting into that part. I'm making the claim that 1,000 people and children and the parts where they had some bones that they wanted to analyze, but somehow everything got misplaced, and the actual professor, that lady in Vancouver, sort of disappeared off. She just sort of came in and then just disappeared off, and no one did a special investigation unit to find the truth or to dig up anything like that. So let's listen to Pierre on this comment.
Entangle two parts, because there is no justification for burning down a church, period. Regardless of the other information or regardless of the other justifications that people would claim to use, there is never a justification to burn down a church. And we as Conservatives have called for stronger criminal sanctions for arson against all who carry out these attacks. We've also called for more security infrastructure around places of worship so that we can stop terrorists who burn down churches, who attack mosques and synagogues. Unfortunately, these crimes against religious communities have raged out of control after 8 years of Justin Trudeau's catch and release system. After he has divided our country and turned people and groups against each other, we have more violence directed against religious groups, including Christians, than we have ever seen in Canadian history. This is the result of Justin Trudeau. He is not worth the cost, he is not worth the crime, and he is not worth the country that we know and love. And we should provide the resources to allow for full investigation into the potential remains at residential schools. Canadians deserve to know the truth, and Conservatives will always stand in favor of historical accuracy. None of this changes the fact that the residential schools were an appalling abuse of power by the state and by the church at the time. And we need to move forward in a country that is free so that every single Canadian, whether their ancestry goes back tens of thousands of years or whether they have been here for 10 days, has the freedom to live their life and in prosperity and happiness. Thank you.
There was a lot of well-chosen words, as it should be, because of the topic of it. And I really thought that, like I said, the Special Investigation Unit, someone would have went in there and they said there were shallow graves as well. Then dig it up, do a closure on this investigation. But I know in the summer they tried to do it and they just stopped doing it. They didn't want to say anything about it. Everyone's quiet. And, you know, all over the world that news went and it was down to children, you know, and the genocide. I thought Trudeau even went to the United Nations and said something about the genocide that Canada has done. And he was really pushing that hard. And nowhere to be found now, Trudeau. He won't find the truth. He doesn't care about that anymore because he needed that at the time. It was very important. And other than that, it just sort of stopped. And the media, they went like crazy. And that story just went really fast. So let's look at the next question. It was a good question. It was a tough question.
Yep. Next question.
Hi, Georgie Smythe, CBC News. Do you believe it's the right move for the federal government to cap the number of international students arriving in Canada for the next 2 years? And would you do the same? I'm looking for an answer in English and French, please.
Yes, the question is, how did we get into this mess? Like, we didn't, you know, most Canadians didn't even know there was an international student program 8 years ago because it was so peaceful. They might have seen students happily walking off to class who were from another country, but we didn't think it was a problem because it wasn't. It worked. We had the most successful immigration system in the history of the world here in Canada. There are nations around the world that come to study how we got it so right for so long. And then along came Justin Trudeau, and through his total incompetence and irresponsibility, through his endless and nauseating virtue signaling, has destroyed that common sense consensus on immigration. Immigrants, international students, and temporary foreign workers are not to blame for his incompetence. He is to blame. He is the one that caused this mess. He is the one that brought hundreds of thousands of people here without homes, to cram 16 or 17 into a one-bedroom or basement apartment. He is the one that granted the the study permits. That is a federal responsibility. He and Sean Fraser granted the study permits for tens of thousands of students to come and go to fake colleges that the Liberal government now admits were, quote, puppy mills. He did that. So let's not blame the students. Let's not blame other levels of government. Let's blame the one man who is responsible for this disaster, and that is our incompetent Prime Minister. Can you think of anything he hasn't screwed up? Like, seriously, it has been, we never had 2 million people at a food bank. Sure, we always had people who struggled. 2 million people at a food bank? We never had a 100% increase in housing costs in 8 years. We never had middle-class carpenters living in parking lots. We never had 30 homeless encampments in Halifax all at once. And we never had the division and the chaos in our immigration system before Justin Trudeau, which proves once again he is not worth the cost. He is not worth the country we know and love.
I'm still surprised students want to come here. I understand that tuition is very expensive anyways. I think most of it's just to get a status in Canada and maybe go into America after is what the end goal is, or something like that. And yeah, it's Sean Fraser and that guy, Mark Miller. You know, you got the immigration guy and the housing guy and the work permits. Those ministries should all be the same person because they don't talk to each other, and they do that on purpose. There's too many departments and ministries. There's too many. They don't talk to each other, and there's no one that can be held responsible when crap hits the fan. They all blame someone else, and then they take off, and then eventually they do a reshuffling in the ministry, so no one can go back and say, oh, this is really what happened. They always say, refer to the other guy and whatever. They leave it alone. Let's keep going with the questions here.
Hello. A month and a half ago or so, it was revealed that the BC office here at CSIS was a toxic workplace for women especially. It's resulted in lawsuits and a workplace culture assessment. And I'm wondering what the reaction you had when those allegations came out publicly. And I'm wondering what a Conservative government would do to improve the working conditions at places like CSIS, at places like the RCMP and the military that have been rocked by these scandals in the years past.
I've never heard about these scandals, so they're all new to me. I do know, as far as toxic in the workforce, that the Governor General, that lady that went to outer space, Payette or whatever, that she had a horrible workplace that she created. She would ask people in the office, like, how much does Saturn weigh and Jupiter and the planets? And when people said they don't know, she just said, you're dumb. Like, I don't know, man. For someone, like, if you're going to win the lottery in the world, life-changing, that is probably the closest job in the world you could get. All you do is you party. You go all over the world, have unlimited expenses. You meet princes, kings, richest people in the world. All you have to do is just put a smile on your face and be nice to people. And what a thing she is, making fun of people because they don't know her science that she has. And you know what? She still gets paid $250,000 a year. Yep, don't know where she is anymore in Canada, if anywhere. Let's listen to this response.
It starts at the top. Justin Trudeau has created a toxic environment right across this country. Remember, it was Justin Trudeau that elbowed a woman in the breast on the floor of the House of Commons, that tried to grab a fellow MP by the arm and drag him down the aisle because he wasn't happy at the pace of a vote happening. It was Justin Trudeau that fired the first Indigenous Attorney General, a proud woman. Why? Because she exposed that he was trying to get her to drop charges on a corrupt Liberal-linked multinational corporation that had robbed over $1 million from the poorest people in Africa. And what did he do? I know, and it starts at the top. And I know, look, CBC never wants Justin Trudeau, the big boss, to be held accountable for his conduct. Same thing. Your Canadian press, your biggest client is CBC, right? You're not sure. I think you're sure. I think you are sure. And I think you know that Justin Trudeau is the head of the government, and the CSIS is part of the government. So I know every time CP writes a story about the latest screw-up in our country, they forget to mention who's the Prime Minister, right? So here's the reality. Justin Trudeau is the head of the government. CSIS is part of the government. If there's a toxic culture in CSIS, it's because the head of the government has caused that toxic culture. And he's done it by setting the example, by mistreating women in his cabinet, in the parliament, in the public service, by dividing one group of Canadians against another, and turning the people against each other within the government and within our society. And that's why after 8 years of Trudeau, there's a toxic workplace at CSIS. There's toxic divisions right across our country. What we need is a common sense government that will hold abusers accountable for how they mistreat fellow employees, and bring in a professional workplace, which we always had in Canada's public service before Justin Trudeau. By the way, I find it incredible that CSIS officials have been leaking about foreign interference in our politics, probably because Justin Trudeau has tried to manipulate the intelligence and cover it up. And that could be contributing to the toxic workplace environment that exists at CSIS and the similar stories we've seen at the RCMP and across the government after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. Thank you.
Thank you. We're just going to move on to this question, the next question here.
Hi, CBC again. Melanie Joly said this morning her statement is her statement and wouldn't elaborate further on whether what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. How adequate is that in terms of clarifying Canada's position?
Well, before he answers, Joly is she's in training. She's in training for that job, and she's going to be like that forever. She is. I thought Christopher England was incompetent. Joly is just totally out to lunch. She has no idea. I don't even know why anyone in the world cares what Canada thinks about the Middle East issues. I mean, this is the foreign policy. Look at Trudeau. He goes back to Ottawa and accuses India of assassination. Like, where's the foreign policy on that? And even Joly inviting that Russian guy to the party. that party in Ottawa and not understanding that there's a war going on. Like, she is totally gone, incompetent, 100% in that job. So let's see what Pierre has to say about her.
English and French as well, please.
Which position?
She did not elaborate further. That's all I can give you, I'm afraid.
Well, I have to figure out which position I'm to comment on, because Justin Trudeau has many different positions on the question that you raised. What he's done is very cynical. He's divided the country again. So he gets a block of MPs to go out to mosques and say that Israel has committed a genocide. And then he gets another group of Liberal MPs to go to synagogues and say that it's totally outrageous to suggest that Israel has committed a genocide. And he sits in the middle of the two and gives incomprehensible statements. You would need a linguist with a PhD and a magnifying glass to figure out the garble that comes out of the foreign minister and the prime minister on this question. Because
she really is incompetent. This is the definition of incompetent, and she should not be there. It's an embarrassment to Canada and an embarrassment to the G7 and 20 that she is there to represent. This is not the best we have in Canada to have her there. She is in training. She will never understand what's going on. It's like teaching math to a dog. It's just not there. It's just not there. She just will not get it at all. It's an embarrassment. So that's a great soundbite. I'm going to keep that one. Let's keep going.
Because they're deliberately giving answers that no one can comprehend. He's divided the country on this just like every other issue. The reality is there is a genocide being carried out by Hamas. I don't have to accuse Hamas of committing genocide. They admit it. They proudly brag about it. It's in their charter. They have announced that as soon as the conflict ends, if they're still in power, they will relaunch another October 7th style attack with the purpose of eliminating all Jews from the Middle East, and they frankly would love to eliminate Jews from the rest of the world. This is a genocidal, homicidal, sadistic death cult. And everything I have just said are things that Hamas admits to. So it's time for the Prime Minister to grow a backbone, stop trying to divide Canadians based on religion and ethnicity, and take a principled stand in favor of humanity and against the real propagators of genocide, who are the Hamas terrorists.
And in French, if possible. Question.
Thank you.
Drea Humphrey again with Rebel News. In the past several times, you have denounced the World Economic Forum, and you've made it clear to pledge that if your party forms government, you will ban your cabinet ministers from being involved with the World Economic Forum. Yet, I'm also aware of many Canadians who applaud you for saying that, but also have reservations on whether or not the claim is authentic because they see images of your name being on the World Economic Forum site, and also because you worked closely with former MP John Baird, who at one point was a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader in a campaign. So my question for clarification purposes, for those concerned about foreign globalist organizations potentially encroaching on our nation's sovereignty, does your pledge to ban cabinet ministers from being associated with or involved with the WEF expand to those you hire as staff as well as advisors?
You know, Stephen Harper was also on the WEF, and a long time ago, when that was 20 years ago or 33 years they've been around, they've evolved too, and the internet has evolved with more people understanding what they do. And even Stephen Harper followed their procedure to say at the age of 67, retirement should start. Like he said that 13 years ago, the WEF told him that by now in 2023 he should change it, and he followed that. So I don't know why it's sort of weird that the WEF makes these calls for countries to do so for so far in the future. I mean, they don't really do the right thing. They don't at all do the right thing. That should all be a Zoom conference, anyways. A lot of it, but I don't understand how. Klaus can put it in his little ski village in the middle of Switzerland there with the tax haven and all the gold that they kept over the war and do it. That is most, I don't know. Anyway, let's listen to the answer.
Yes. No staff, no ministers, no MPs in my caucus will be involved whatsoever in that organization. It is a group of high-flying, high-tax, high-carbon hypocrites who all got on their private jets to fly off to a remote ski village where they talked about how working-class people should not be allowed to heat their homes or drive their pickup trucks. I'm not going to work for a group of globalist billionaires who serve their own interests at the expense of everyone else. And I'd like to specifically point out Mark Carney. Here he was celebrating the central banks who caused the inflation by printing trillions of dollars so that people like multimillionaires like him could have their asset values inflated while the purchasing power of working class people and seniors was wasted away by inflation. A massive wealth transfer from the have-nots to the have-yachts. A common-sense conservative government will bring home control of our democracy to this country, and it's not just on that issue. We will ban the IRGC to end the interference of the 700 agents that are operating in this country on behalf of the terrorist regime in Tehran, and that's according to Global News. We'll shut down foreign-controlled police stations. We will bring in a foreign influence registry. We will bring home control of our democracy, and we'll make this a country that works for its people, the common people, and the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Thank you.
Well, on that, with the interference, this is something, United Nations are the ones that should have foreseen this and tried to tell countries what to do when that happens, when the interference comes from Asia. They should have done something about it, but they don't. But they never do anything to actually help countries. That's not their goal, the United Nations or the World Economic Forum. It's not. They are just professional activists that know how to take money from weak countries that will have weak leaders that take it and spin stories and use division. And that's exactly what I see in the last 8 years from that guy. So anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Best of goodbyes.